Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's theme of music that isn't rock or metal. And as I mentioned yesterday, we have a second Boards of Canada track requested for this theme. We're going to be looking at something called Music is Math. Now, yesterday, Boards of Canada surprised me in a couple of different ways, but it wasn't necessarily a track that I found I would listen to on my own. Curious to see where Boards of Canada takes us today. So let's dive in. Something about these tones right off the start, they feel nostalgic to me. Something about it feels like the 90s, and I can't place where I've heard this. I think it's really the timbre. The note choice is an element of it that certainly leans into the nostalgia, but I think it's really more the coloring of it, the sound itself. An interesting mix, though, of curiosity and tinge of fear. There's a reluctance to explore whatever. So we have texture expansion here, more percussive sounds, but not really an evolution too much of atmosphere. Although the more present percussive stuff does create something that feels more progressive, like it wants to move forward, even though harmonically we're stuck in this moment. There's movements of the, I don't know what is it vocals or is it a vocal synth patch? I ask because I don't know that I hear syllables in there. Kind of a haunting sound. There's something a little unnatural. All right. Interesting track from them. And once again, I don't know that I have a lot to talk about here. It's a pretty straightforward song. And unlike yesterday's track, we don't even have an intro. The song gets right into the core of it, and we just ride that out to the end. Also, well, actually, much like yesterday's track, though, we sit in a single idea and explore it, expand upon it. We don't really progress in a way that feels like a journey. It just really feels like a complete and exhaustive exploration of this place. We don't need to go anywhere else. We don't need to go on a journey or develop a story. We're fully embracing and understanding this specific sonic zone that we're in. And so, much like yesterday, this track creates a beat, it creates a sonic foundation, and it gives us our chord progression at the beginning of the track. The rest of the song then is what can we add or expand upon this core idea, creating the harmony and the rhythm and not touching that at all. Now, what's interesting is this exploration in yesterday's track, which was called something about a balloon. Everything you do is a balloon. That song was about harmonic exploration, crafting a variety of more and more complex emotional atmospheres by playing more notes simultaneously. Here, we don't explore that. I would say that the general harmonic vibe of this track is incredibly consistent, something that feels along the lines of a curiosity mixed with a fear or an apprehension. Sometimes we get those at the same time, sometimes it's just one or the other. It's just how the chordal progression goes. What we get on top of that, though, is kind of percussive, at least through a majority of this track. The first half, maybe a little more. We get more percussive attacks, louder percussive attacks, new percussive timbres and sounds. And I think what really stands out to me here is the production of these, which have more presence. They feel forward in the mix, closer to me listening to it. They feel very present and impossible to ignore. They're in the spotlight. It almost feels as if we've uncovered something that is working in parallel to this track. The new percussive elements don't push against the drum beat that we have at the beginning of the song, but I wouldn't necessarily say that it completely falls in line with it either. It's cohesive, but not expansive. It's kind of doing its own thing rather than trying to figure out how we can push outside of what the original drum beat is. But it doesn't cause any friction with it either. The two percussive elements work really well together. It's mostly, I would say, a production thing here more than anything else, and that kind of informs my understanding of the back half of this track too, which is mostly sonic exploration. These sounds coming in, usually a bit on the higher pitch side, lots of crackling and distortion going on. I don't know how to interpret it thematically or even artistically. To me, it's a facet of this song, but not one that I would say I understand. I think it's fine enough. It doesn't distract from the music, but I don't understand its inclusion either. unlike the rhythmic elements, unlike the extra percussive instruments, unlike the harmonic elements to this, those all I can find purpose to, find understanding of, gain something out of, an insight or perspective into the creation process. But this, I can't. And I think part of that is because it's not musical. A lot of it is sonic exploration here. There is a pitch to it, and there is an oscillation of placement as well as a little bit of timbre warble, not timbre, pitch warble, where the pitch isn't always consistent and creates a microtonal approach to it. I can quantify it in musical terms, but I don't understand it from a musical perspective. It just kind of is a sound that is played in the final minute or minute and a half of the track. It moves throughout the song, kind of rising and falling, shifting sides, but I don't get it. It doesn't tell me anything. At least not within my perspective of the track. Maybe a couple other listens, maybe some of y'all giving me your interpretations to this. I might be able to see some purpose to it, but off of a first time listen, it just sort of was. And I suppose that wraps up all that I have to say about this. Much like yesterday's Boards of Canada track, this is just an idea, a full exploration of it, but it also doesn't really go too deep either. A more maximalist approach to this could certainly pull out more things to do on top of this foundation. Boards of Canada, at least based off of the limited number of tracks I've heard from them, they're not interested in a more maximalist exploration. They just want to really dig into this vibe. Figure out what this vibe is, not what it can become, not where it can go, but just what it is. And I think that this song does a good job of that. I don't think it does it as well as yesterday's track, but also a lot of that comes from my lack of understanding of this too. But I do feel that the general growth and evolution in everything you do as a balloon made more sense to me. I could understand and appreciate that more than I could with this track. I just don't get the finale here. I'm going to go look for some lyrics. I don't think there's going to be any, but I did hear something voice-like in here, and I got to double check just in case, you know. And this doesn't make any more sense to me than the back half of the track did. There's two repeated ideas, the past inside the present, and then the phrase yellow ball, which is actually the most repeated phrase in here. We hear that 6 times somehow. Like I mentioned during the reaction itself, I didn't really hear syllables, but I did hear voice, if that makes sense. More vocals than language. But there are words in here. There's also one phrase, it is the last phrase mentioned. It just says perfect circle, which I think is interesting. If we're talking about a time, the past inside the present, that could be some sort of looping idea, cyclicality of time, maybe an impossible cyclicality of time, but there is a circle, a cycle to it. Perfect circle lines up with that, and I think it's interesting that circle is also the flattened version of a ball, the 2-dimensional version of the 3-dimensional sphere. I'm not sure where yellow comes into this, but I do see some threads tying this all together, though I will admit the threads themselves aren't helping me understand this. I just see the patterns. I don't know what they mean. And so I'm going to wrap this one up, extending the invitation out to tell me what this song means to you. These are my thoughts on Boards of Canada's Music is Math. What do you think of this? Did you enjoy it? Is there anything that stood out? Anything that you'd like to correct me on if I was wrong about something? Do you have your own perspective or opinion on this? Let me know. Put all of that, as well as anything else you'd like to add, into the comments below. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.